Welcome back to Peak Performance Radio. Today I have a world-renowned presenter, coach, fitness educator, a great mentor, person I can't say enough about, person that has enlightened me about heart rate training. I have the pleasure of introducing today Sally Edwards. So with no further ado, she's going to share with us today something that's really close to me, close to my heart, no pun intended. But I've had the opportunity of working with her in the past, and I'm welcoming her to our Peak Performance group to enlighten us about heart rate training and some new cutting-edge technology that could be simply applied to your energy system training. So with no further ado, Sally, welcome to Peak Performance Radio.
Well, I kind of want to go back into history a little bit because I think it helps people to understand heart rate training and energy systems and zones. And so if everyone will bear with me, the story for me begins in 1984. Okay, that's over 30-some years ago, 1984, or maybe it's nearly 40 years ago. I bought my first heart rate monitor, and it was $500, and it was a Polar, and it was, to me, totally clear that everybody who was a performance athlete who wanted to be competitive would put a heart rate monitor on, and they would do better. And part of the reason I was doing that is that I'd been selected to go to the Olympic trials in the marathon. And it was the first year women were allowed, I know it sounds strange to your younger audience, that we were discriminated against in running and couldn't run more than 1,500 meters in any Olympic running event. And the idea was that, we as women, it would be damaging to our physiology, it hurt our ovaries and our breasts would drop, and so many old myths that were used to keep us from running long distance. So I put on my $500 Polar heart rate monitor. I trained. I went up to Olympia, Washington, and I knew I wasn't going to win, but I ran a 250 marathon. And Joan Benoit Samuelson won that event. It was a historic event. She's always been a heroine of mine, and she then went on and won the gold medal in the Olympic Games in Los Angeles in 1984. But I was there with my heart rate monitor, looking at these numbers, not having a clue. And I believe that many people today are doing exactly the same thing. They don a heart rate monitor, they look at some number. Mine was 172 beats a minute. We don't know if we do better at 175 beats or 170 beats or whatever number. And I started writing about it, and I wrote the very first book called The Heart Rate Monitor Book. That was the title of the book, and it sold 1.5 million copies. And it was helped launch heart rate training in the late 1980s after I had been doing it. The second thing that really influenced me is that I had co-founded and started when I was then 28 years old a running shoe store chain called Fleet Feet Sports. So here I am, this young woman. I want to get America fit. I don't have very much money, and I have the big dream, to get America fit. And I opened the first Fleet Feet store, and then subsequently about 2 years we opened the second one, and then I started a franchise of that company. And we and all of our Fleet Feet stores were the very first adopters to sell heart rate monitors to runners. And sure enough, I noticed that they would buy these expensive heart rate monitors, the Polar Accurex 2. This was long before there wasn't a Garmin. Timex didn't make made watches, but they didn't make heart rate monitors. And they would use them for 2 or 3 weeks and put them in the drawer and never use them again. And we would sell thousands of the Polar heart rate monitors in our stores. And I said, well, I love this little watch. I put it on, and I do better, and I beat my competition because I'm training in zones. Why would people put them back in the drawer and never use them again? And sure enough, for many people, it was really, really confusing. They cross-talked, they interfered with each other, and so the data that displayed on the display wasn't always accurate. And they weren't really all that much fun. They were just like, okay, I guess I need to know that, I'm doing this tempo run at 144 beats a minute. And, but it didn't have context to it. It just was a number. So I decided to develop the original maximum heart rate training system that is been used in every single piece of cardio equipment by every single manufacturer, by every single watch company. And at that time, all we knew was this formula 220 minus your age. And these heart rate monitors would set up zones, and they took the 5 zones that I created, which were blue, green, yellow, orange, and red colors. And I gave them names and caloric value and how much lactate you were going to spew out when you're in the zone and what the benefit was, and created a robust training system called Heart Zones Training.
So, Sally, you gave these zones colors. Were there any specific relationship to those colors?
Good question, Marcelo. Yes, the colors, heart rate training is about intensity. It's about how hard you're going. It's about quality, not quantity, which is another whole discussion, because which do I want? Do I want the quality of the workout, or do I want to know the intensity, or do I want to know the quantity, like how many steps did I take, how far did I go? And all of the science shows that quality, heart rate, intensity, power, and watts is the most important thing you can have in your exercise activity, is how hard are you going? So I used the thermometer, and I said, when it's the coldest it can possibly be, it's low intensity, it's blue. And when it's sizzling, it's bright red. And the colors between are all based on how hard, how hot, how cold your zone is.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And I remember, your book. I think it was in the mid 1980s where I had my first heart rate monitor. It was the Polar Beat, and and I remember having it out of high school simply because I was diagnosed with a heart murmur, and my cardiologist was like, "Well, I'm not going to restrict you from playing sports, but here is this." And at that time, they bundled your book with a lot of their heart rate monitor sales, and I remember reading it. And even my co-host, John Savelle, who's done the Ironman, has actually even used your triathlete book to do the Ironman. And the one thing that we both found was that, we got to put things in context. And you brought up something really important there: quality over quantity. And I think way too often in today's world, you find people always wanting to do more, thinking more is better, or working hard all the time is better. And, after reading your book, it made complete sense, especially with everything you've said is always supported by research. So, I know I'm not gonna comment. I'll save some of my questions. So go ahead. I have some ideas already of where you're going to be going. So go ahead.
So I'll keep going with the history. So, when I was in my mid-20s, sure enough, 220 minus your age worked for me. But then I got into my 30s, and my maximum heart rate never changed to beat. And then I got into my 40s and never changed in my 50s, and now in my 60s, my maximum heart rate is exactly the same. And I have a friend, he's 94 years old. His name's Paul Kammerer. His maximum heart rate, I've been measuring it for 40 years. It's never changed to beat. So I said, well, why is it that we're all using the formula? So I went to the then president of the American College of Sports Medicine, a guy named Carl Foster. He's a PhD at the University of Wisconsin. I said, Carl, I've done extensive research on the history of this formula. And I said, do you know where it comes from? And he said, his first word I'll never forget. He said, Sally, the formula is useless. It's one of the worst things that ever happened in cardio training. It should be thrown out, and no one should ever follow it. There's absolutely no science behind it. I said, well, I have known that since I first started using my heart rate monitor that some, not one size doesn't fit all. You mean Marcelo, you might be 6 feet tall with a shoe size 9, and this other person's 6 feet tall. He's got a shoe size 13. But why is it that our maximum heart rates are already the same when we know our feet and our heart size, which is really what maximum heart rate is about, is not the same? And so I started digging in, and I found the research where that formula came from, and it was done by a medical doctor. Haskell is his name. He's from Stanford, and he was sitting on an airplane one day, and he got out. He was talking to his friend. He said, there's kind of this, we're using this cross-sectional research, which is, again, not as valid as longitudinal research. He says there's a regression equation, and that equation is 220 minus your age. So let's just use it for everybody. And it's just so sad because you take people like Carl Foster, the PhD from the University of Wisconsin. He's a co-author of My Need to Be a Better Runner. I'm just putting a little pitch in for a really good running book on science and
I've read it. It's a great book.
Thanks. And Carl and I collaborate. And he said, when I was in college and I was running on track, I never could get my heart rate over 150 beats a minute. And the coach would say, come on, Carl, get it up to 180. And he said, I felt like a failure. And a lot of people do, because this formula has got to come out of off the walls on these wall charts in every health club in America, out of the mindset of people, out of the formulas built into heart rate monitors and treadmills, and they say, how old are you? And you say, I'm 40. And so they go, the maximum heart rate is 220 minus 40 is 180. And everybody who's 40 years old, his maximum heart rate on these machines is 180. And it's scary, actually. It's dangerous for people to use it.
No, I noticed it as well in working one-on-one and then working in team sports, that there was always something wrong. And the funny thing is, most people I know, I've worked with Polar and I've worked with different physiological status monitoring companies, and I started asking the same questions. And I noticed, that one time we met at a trade show and we started talking about it. And I know that it kind of spurred you to seek a better answer. And I know you're going to talk about this. Why don't you, for the most part, what I know is that 220 minus your age was adopted by everyone, and even the equipment manufacturers. It's till this day now, I think, 40 years of using that number, people still want to use an algorithm, and that's where I think the problem exists. What are some? I know some organizations are starting to change what they're teaching, and I know that in your book, in two of your books, you've kind of talked about two different methods. I know that in this presentation you were going to talk about it. So you know what? I'll wait until you get a little bit further in here. It's just I'm kind of excited because I think that if people haven't heard this, you should have. You should always be asking better questions and being a critical thinker and wondering why a 90 or 70-year-old could still achieve a higher heart rate value when that algorithm should say that they should be stopping at 140.
Yes, because it was an invented formula. I call it pulled out of your ass. I don't mean to be crass, but that's where it came from. And there's no science, there's no research behind it, there's no substantiation. It's totally invented, and it's been very, very, in my opinion, damaging. I've worked hard for the last 30 years to get it taken out of, and for the first time, ACE, American Council on Exercise, is now saying you can't use that formula. But look how long it's taken for some of this old school exercise science. It's still there. It's still in almost every manufacturer's heart rate monitor. They ask you for your age, and you know what they're trying to do. So the only way, and I need to say I've left maximum heart rate. I think it's really valuable. We still teach it in our certifications for trainers and school teachers and coaches. But I think there's a better system, and That system is based on the threshold training system is the name of it, and it's what zoning is based on. And zoning is so I started hard zones training. I'm going to give you this history. I think it's interesting and where it's progressed over the years, heart rate training. And I went to every heart rate monitor manufacturer, and I said, you know, I'm an educator, I'm a trainer, I'm a coach, I'm an professional athlete, and I'd like to help get everybody in the world to have a heart rate monitor. I think everyone should have one on their wrist. And only about 10% of the participatory athletes currently use a heart rate monitor, and I think 100% should be doing that. So how do I go from there? And I, 6 years ago, filed a patent. It's the first U.S. federal patent that's ever been granted to a training program, a cardio training program. And that patent is called the threshold training system. And you can look it up in the patent office, and what it involves is rather than using maximum heart rate, there's a much more robust, a much more interesting, a much more dynamic way of setting cardio zones, and that's using the two different thresholds that zoning is the program that we use, and I have a slideshow I'd like to show everybody a little bit about zoning and walk you through, but the threshold training system is now the way the fitness industry is starting to go. Cyclists are avid threshold trainers. And sure enough, Carl Foster at the University of Wisconsin has been really, really helpful in the research behind how to test and assess for what are the numbers that match it, when does it change, why does it change. And by the way, there are two of them and not one. So you want to go to that PowerPoint? You want me to give you a little more detail, Marcelo, on threshold training versus maximum?
No, go ahead. You could change your slides.
Okay. So this is a little kind of a slide showing a picture of me in high energy, and we have a team of zoning specialists, and if you go to our website for zoning, is zoningfitness.com, and you can meet a zoning specialist. And a zoning specialist doesn't take a certification, or you simply read the book Zoning and you get a Blink Heart Watch, and I'll tell you why that's so important. And you get to do a brand new cardio program that's based on threshold. And there's a video. If you go to YouTube and you type in the zoning, you'll see a video, actually not one video, we have 10 different videos on different ways and workouts that you can use doing zoning. But let me get to what is zoning. Zoning is the first program that uses colored lights and numbers together. So when I work out, and I wear glasses now, I have a hard time reading the beats per minute in a watch or on my bike computer or in a swimming pool where I'm wearing my goggles. So the Blink, and there's two models. This is the simple one called the Blink 1. It only has one button. And you know, Marcel, it reminds me of the Polar Beat.
That's right.
It didn't have any buttons. Did it have any buttons?
No, it didn't have any buttons, but the form factor reminds me a lot of the Polar Beat.
Yeah, okay. And the reason I love the Blink 1, which is what I'm going to have this slideshow on, is for your clients and for the people you're working with, they really want to see it in a glance. They want to know if they're in a blue, which is, and you can see the I-N-K in the word blink in the slide. Blue is low intensity. It's your warm-up zone. It's getting started. It's your recovery zone. It's your cool-down zone. Yellow is I call it the golden zone. The yellow zone is moderate intensity. It's a zone you want to spend lots of time in because that's where you're going to get your endurance benefit. The yellow zone is really powerful because if you want to lose weight, that's the most critical range of heartbeats to be in. And yellow is really, really valuable because it gives you the benefits of getting fitter. And most people would like to get fitter, and that happens in that yellow zone. And then when it flashes red, what's happening is I call it the 3 H's: high, hot, hard. It's high intensity, it's hot, which means you're going to be sweating and creating a lot of thermal activity. And it's hard. You don't want to talk very much. You just want to, when you're in that high intensity zone, you just kind of want to, I better be quiet and just work out. So for the first time, you see a light. No one's ever done that before. I'm trying to simplify this.
I think it makes a complete sense because, I in my history of working with people in heart rate, it's always, what does that number mean? And now this is a simpler way, not only simpler, but people don't have to focus in. They can quickly view their wrist unit and say, what color am I in? If it's blinking, like I've used a unit that I have, and it's been fun because side by side, I'll actually wear 2 heart rate monitors because I always want to compare, products to each other, and that's how I've always been like that. I've been a tech geek, and I've compared the Blink to the golden standard that's been out in the industry for a while, and it's par for par. It's beat for beat accurate, and the cool thing about it was I could put it right on my handlebar of my treadmill or my bike, and I just view and take a look if I'm in my yellow, if I'm in my red, if I'm doing interval training. I think it's a if I'm a trainer and I'm trying to explain heart rate in a simple way where it's not going to take 15 or 20 minutes to explain energy systems to my client, I just explain it this way, and I think that's the big value to people.
Yep. Good job. Yeah. EKG accuracy, absolutely. Simplicity, yes. Colors, not numbers. Ease of use. And the other thing is that this is an analog, and you're going to see in the slide the word analog. And there are 3 different kinds of transmissions now that you're going to have to choose between. Actually, there's 4. Excuse me about that. There's analog, which are kind of like radio waves, and they can interfere with each other, and you can get this called crosstalk. But the low-end heart rate monitors, almost all of them are analog.
Yes.
The next one is digital, and we have a digital Blink that is available if you go to zoningfitness.com or heartzones.com, and it pairs. Okay, that's let me define that word. Pairs means that it locks on to the watch always. It never forgets. The 2 of them always talk together, and there's no interference. There's no crosstalk. You can be within an inch of somebody else, and you will not get any kind of interference. So I like digital a lot. The next is called Ant Plus. Oh, do I like Ant Plus? Ant Plus is a type of digital, but it's called a really big word for it. It's called interoperable. And interoperable means that all the devices can all talk to each other. So you can have a Garmin transmitter belt and a Polar watch and a Suunto, something or other, and you can have all these different manufacturers. But if those manufacturers all stamp on it, Ant Plus, then they will all pick up each other. They'll all be paired, but all pick each other. And the last one is called Bluetooth, and it's low power 4.0 Bluetooth. And Bluetooth is, I have to say, I like all these technologies. Bluetooth will allow you easily to talk to a Droid or an iPhone. The digital can talk to the Droids and the iPhones. They need a dongle. So if you don't want to have the hassle of the dongle, then the Bluetooth transmitter belts and watches are your best solution. But that may be more. Was that too much detail?
No, I think people understand it today. I mean, there's many different types of communication. Bluetooth, Ant Plus, and analog and digital radio frequencies kind of been in the traditional heart rate monitor. Mm-hmm. And I know that you guys have the digital and the analog and the Bluetooth solution. It makes complete sense, when you're looking at what you want to get. I definitely, what I will share is, the society today is all smartphone driven, and it helps to have a wrist unit that could share information sometimes with a smartphone, but now there's adapters, there's different types of solutions, and I know you even have phone apps as well that work with the belts that you use for your Blink program as well.
Yes, you could plug in a little dongle in our little Blink which sells for about $60, not $300. Can't talk to an iPhone with a dongle adapter. I'm going to keep rolling. So
Sure.
the other things I like about the Blink 1 and the Blink 2, I haven't talked about the Blink 2, I'm going to get to it, is it's easy to program. It takes 10, you will have in your Blink your high threshold, your high number and the low number, and I'm going to explain that in just a minute to you. So easy to program is really what clients want. They don't want a bunch of 6 buttons and they can't remember which ones to push, and they're really frustrated. So there's a Blink family of heart watches that are in ANT, digital, and Bluetooth, and analog, and they all are companions. It's the first heart rate monitor that has a companion program that works with it. Versus put on this heart monitor, you go figure out the program. And the zoning program that has been patented is only 3 steps. I've taken, and I have studied exercise physiology with graduate degrees for 45 years. I've taken this body of knowledge about cardio training, and I have boiled it all down to 3 things people need to know. And that, again, is really, really hard. So here comes the 3 things and 3 colors. The first is called 5, 20, and 5. So the zoning program is 5 minutes. We need to teach people that a standard, safe way to do cardio is to warm up. And that warm-up time needs to be in blue for about 5 minutes, then 20 minutes of yellow and red time, and then 5 minutes of cool down. Now, are you going to say, oh, Sally, 30 minutes isn't enough? And I agree. The research shows we need 60 minutes a day of cardio, but if we're going to get started, we're going to do 5:25 and 5:20, 20 minutes, and 5 minutes. And then I want you to double that. I want you to go 10, 40, and 10. And the second step, which is I love because I cross-trained so much, and actually I coined the word cross-training. The second one is called variety. So the human physiology doesn't want you to always be in the same zone. It wants you a little bit of time in that blue easy zone and a little bit of time in that moderate yellow zone. And yeah, when you get fitter, some red time will really burn calories. It doesn't burn a lot of fat, it burns a lot of calories, and the body really wants to burn calories. And the third one, and then I'm going to ask you, Marcella, for your comments, is called change it up. So change it up means that it's really important in cardio training to have a lot of different kinds of things, different time and zones, different modes of workout, different equipment that you might be using, even change up your training partners. Like get one if you don't have one, and if you have one, get a couple more because you'll work out, you'll do zoning. Cardio, put on it, and the first step is put on a Blink, follow the 3 steps of zoning, and you will have a much better chance of being successful.
Yeah, I mean, what gets measured gets done at the end of the day, and changing it up is very important because most people will program for themselves what they like to do. And that, having a objective tool along with something that gets measured and it shows you if you're improving and shows you if you're challenging yourself, it is meaningful. So yeah, it's important. I hope hopefully everyone gets this, that, that this simple programming modality is important.
Yeah. So I then said, well, what are the different educational tools that I can provide to help people understand zoning, the patent cardio program from Zoning Fitness Company, and this is the heart of zoning. You'll see there's no numbers on this chart. There's no heart. This is a heart rate chart, but it's all based on color. Sure enough, your Blink is going to give you a number, but it's what happens, the power of zone training. You call these 3 energy systems in your world, and we call them training zones, is really, really powerful. And it starts from everything to what the color is, to how hard you're going, to talking. And the assessment is based on talking. That's why that column is so important. And then the benefits: get fit, get fitter, get fast. And not everybody needs to get in that red zone to get fast. I love this gold and yellow zone a lot. And then what happens to our health, our wellness, which is really important, because if you're not doing performance, you never have to do red zone training. And then how hard you're going to go. If you're walking, for example, in blue, it would be a brisk walk. If you're in yellow, you'd be doing endurance walking. That's pushing your arms and striding out, breathing strong, and then all out is not as fast as you can go. It's about what you can do in about 30 minutes of walking. Then there's a column of calories burned, and the one column everybody loves is this green and orange column, which is how much of this green carbohydrates am I burning in that zone, and how much of that yellow fat, that orange fat, am I burning. And you can see in the blue zone, you don't burn very many total calories. This is another myth in the fitness industry. It's I do low-intensity exercise and burn all these calories. Well, Marcelo, how many calories do you think you really burn down those low zones?
Oh, not many. I've actually read a study one time, and I used to use this all the time, which is, talking about this 150-pound cyclist that was, many strength coaches replicated this, where they do low-intensity efforts, quote-unquote fat-burning zone, and all of a sudden they realize that, they burned 41% of their fat-burning zone, but when they did the moderate zone, they might have burned a little bit less fat but more calories, but when they did interval training, going to the red, back down to the blue, and then back up and doing interval training for the same period of time, not only did that individual burn more calories, but they also burned more fat. So the take-home message is, first, knowing your zones. Secondly, training with the proper intensities that match your fitness. This chart is fantastic because it really, gives you the whole overview, and it's simple. And I think sometimes people look at this, things and they're like, it's too simple. It can't be that simple. And in reality, it is. I mean, people really just say, all right. And the thing is they don't know. That's the bigger thing. It's like, all right, talk test. You're telling me that a talk test will actually equal what a ventilation test or what a different types of metabolic diagnostic tools will do, which are great, but at the end of the day, not always accessible and sometimes too and I know you've always said it's costly. Can you explain a little bit of the talk test and how, because that will frame all of this, I think, for people.
Sure. So the next question, which is what Marcelo asked very well, is how do I know what to program into my blank heart watch, because I don't know the number to put in for the top of yellow. That's that black line that crosses this chart. That's just between yellow and red, and between the top of blue, which is that easy zone. And those are the two numbers you need to know. And those two numbers have names, and they're really big scientific names. I'm going to give them to you, but you don't have to remember this at all. So the top of blue is called lactate threshold 1 or ventilatory threshold 1. In the old days, we called it the aerobic zone. And that and the anaerobic zones are terms that have been frowned upon now for probably 15 or 20 years because there's no clear definition of those, so we don't use them. We use the word threshold. That's where the threshold training system comes in. The threshold training system is we're going to set these two numbers that is going to give you that yellow zone and say time below the yellow zone is blue and time above the yellow zone is red. And those names are called threshold, low threshold, that's the top of blue. Low threshold is also called the first threshold. and the top of yellow is called high threshold. It's VT, ventilatory threshold 2, lactate threshold 2. It's the old anaerobic threshold. We don't use that anymore. We call it, today it's called T for threshold, T2. So we have T1, which is at the top of blue, and T2, which is the top of yellow. So how do we get those? And Carl Foster is this brilliant exercise, past president of the American College of Sports Medicine, a great researcher. Just has written profound work and done profound work. I respect him enormously. And he created a test, and he validated it, a field test. So there's two kinds of tests, lab tests and field tests. Field tests are ones that we're going to go out and do on our own. Lab tests, we're going to get ourselves all wired up and hooked up to electrical equipment and be very precise. But we're within about 5 beats per minute on field tests. And by doing this field test, we're going to get to the top of blue and the top of yellow. And now I want to show you, I would like to take credit for a piece of this work, but really Carl Foster deserves. Here is the protocol for measuring T1, first threshold, low threshold, and T2. And for your listeners, I want to share just a common statement, which is we've only been looking at one threshold, which is that T2, the top of yellow. But in your heart, you know there's more than one threshold, and that's because this is what happens. I start moving. I go a little harder. I go a little harder, and as I approach T1, the top of blue, you know there's a shift. That's what a threshold is. There's a shift in the metabolic response to exercise intensity. Marcel, in your world, you would go, I'm going from one energy system to another energy system. That's what T1 is. And T1 is that first time, and I have to say it's a little bit hard to measure in a field test because it's pretty sensitive, T1, because you really have to be aware of your body and go, it got a little bit harder. It's not really hard. It's just that first shift, that first change, and that you measure it in breathing, because in your breathing, you go, I'm breathing, I'm having a good time, I'm chit-chatting, and all of a sudden you go, I better breathe in. In other words, there's a demand for oxygen at that first metabolic response to energy intensity. That I better start breathing a little bit deeper, a little more frequently, because I need, my first sign, I'm going out of a steady state, I'm going into a need for more oxygen. Do you have a way you like to describe that first threshold, Marcelo?
I mean, physiologically, the way I have always been instructed, because I've done physiological lab testing many times, and VT1 is exactly how you described it, which is kind of, you just start working out, your body temperature just changed, you start realizing that you're perspiring, and all of a sudden you start realizing that you're laboring a little bit in your breath, not fatigue, that you're feeling warm, you're feeling a little sweaty, and you're like, oh, things are not the same as I started before. And, so you'll see an increase in ventilation. The novel exerciser or the sedentary exerciser or the weekend warrior has no consciousness of this yet. But as you start using biofeedback, you start realizing that. You're like, oh, that's what they're talking about. So, what Sally's sharing here is really important, because I think biofeedback, and the more times you do this type of testing, because you should be doing testing like this quite often, at least every 4 to 6 weeks, folks, but having a device that helps you provide this feedback. So that's how I would describe VT1 or aerobic base zone.
Yeah. So now we just pass through T1 and we go, I'm now going from easy intensity to moderate. I'm going from blue to yellow. I'm going from stay fit to get fitter. That's the golden yellow zone. I'm going from burning a little bit more fat than carbohydrates, but in that blue zone, but not very many of either one, to I'm starting to be burning some calories. And that's where you want It spends a lot of time. Where do I burn lots of calories? So you go a little faster, you go a little harder. I'm going to the middle of the yellow zone. I'm going towards the top of the yellow zone. And there is a second threshold. And it's called T, as in threshold, T2. So T2 is high threshold. And high threshold is the second metabolic shift that happens. And that second metabolic shift means that you're going to now start, and if we got some scientists in the room or some really good experienced coaches, where you need to expire a lot of carbon dioxide. You're still sucking up a lot of oxygen, but the first shift in this metabolic response to exercise intensity where you go, I got to get rid of this carbon dioxide, and the best way to do it is to breathe out really hard. And that second threshold, when you pass through it, it's like, I call it a bit like deer in the headlights. If you're riding your bike, you just stop talking and you just say in your mind, if I want to stay here, I have to stop talking and just focus on riding my bike hard. If I'm swimming, if I'm running, if I'm running along, I just go, well, my eyesight changes. I focus on the trail ahead. I, again, stop talking because it's uncomfortable, and it's called the Can You Speak Comfortably test is the name of this assessment, this zoning assessment. And you just go, I probably can stay here. I'm pretty fit. I might be able to stay here for 40 or 45 minutes. When I'm not very fit, I can only stay here for 30 minutes, and then it's all over. I stop because it's not a sustainable exercise intensity. Marcelo, how do you describe that red zone?
This is what I affectionately call the lunch pail workout, where it's the workout where you better be ready to work. You're going to feel it. Your lungs will be burning. You'll feel your muscles working. You're definitely having a sweaty shirt workout. And, it's work. It's what people could relate to, really. But, VT2 is the point where, from the physiological side, you always see that great spike or change in ventilation. And, that usually always is indicated with all this, with some type of spirometer or some type of string gauge type device. But for the most part, the biofeedback that you're proposing with a simple talk test, it does the same thing. So, what do could you say anything in your talk test? Could you phrase anything at these points? Are they, you kind of describe it here, do a 5-minute warm up, and then these are 2-minute stages. As you increase in intensity, you have to recite a certain phrase. Can you say any type of phrase?
Trying to follow the science of exercise is really important. And in the lab validation of the field test, can you speak comfortably? The request is, there's needs to be a string of words that you say so you can see the disruption in the word pattern to match the changes in the breathing frequency and effort and flow. So Carl Foster's recommended that we say something we have memorized. So Mary had a little lamb, the alphabet A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or the best that he has found is what every school child knows in America and in your whatever country that you're in, which is the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. So when you are in above T2 or right at T2, you typically get about 4 to 6 words before there's I better inhale because I just said I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. So that phrase seems to work really, really well in the zoning assessment called Can You Speak Comfortably? I'm going to keep going.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Sure. And it's patriotic as well.
It is, and I'm very patriotic. I love our flag. So if someone were going to set up a zoning program, you do this on your own. You don't need certifications and classes. We have resources for you. The book is very powerful. It's called Zoning Fitness in a Blink. And it is fitness in a blink. There's a flashing LED light, blue, yellow, and red. You stay in the zones. You follow the 3 easy steps. We have zoning specialists throughout the United States, and you can go to our website, and you'll see the pictures and their locations, and you just go ahead and contact them directly. I want you to do the zoning assessment to find the top of blue and the top of yellow. And Marcel, you're right. You need to redo this assessment about every 6 weeks because as you get fitter, it changes. And the last is, this is what I say to the people I work with, which is the first step to doing your cardio is to put on a watch, put on a blink watch, and then go get in your zones. But without it, you're guessing, you're estimating, you don't have biofeedback, and I love biofeedback because of the motivation that it brings. So that's how you start as a coach, as a teacher, as a fitness professional. It's easy to do. Read a book, watch YouTube videos, contact a specialist, become a zoning specialist. Get on our website. We encourage you to do that. And it doesn't cost money, and all you have to do is lead a zoning program. And once you lead a zoning program, then we're going to put you on our website, and we're going to support you and your customers. So it's a really good idea to become a zoning specialist because it's easy to do and fun, and you get to make some money at it, selling blinks, and you buy them at wholesale and sell them at retail. It works unbelievably. Do you have any comments on that, Marcelo?
No, I definitely encourage people to do that. I'm actually working in the process of doing this. So, yeah, for me, I've been a big fan. For me, this makes complete sense simply because at the end of the day, 220 minus your age is something that we have to stop spreading that myth. And we also need to have something that works. I personally also know Dr. Foster. I've met him when I actually done some work with different people at the University of Wisconsin. And this methodology falls right in line to what we're trying to encourage our community, which is finding a blueprint for success, for performance. Mm-hmm. And this really, I can't say enough about it. The big thing that I want people to understand is that this is not rocket science. This is a real simple approach that we can have enjoyment, but we could also get results as opposed to just working harder for working hard's sake. So I encourage all my brethren out there that are trainers and that are owners, and to really look at this model. And the one thing that you'll see that the big difference is that this is not driven by organizations that are trying to continuously try to bleed you somehow. And I hate saying that, but there's no other good way of describing it. Our mission at Zoning Fitness is to get America fit, and the best way I know is to one person at a time, and one person helps another person, and they get a motivational tool like a blink watch, and they start doing zoning, and it doesn't cost anything really, and it's really, really powerful. So here's our product line, and you can go to the website, Zoning Fitness, and learn more about it. We bundle together different solutions and banners and fun stuff to have, and what I tell everybody is let's get zoning. And let's do it in the easy blue and the moderate yellow and the hard red, and there's no better time than to do that than right now because it works. It's based on science. It's 40 years of my work with using heart watches, and I thank you and the Peak Performance Radio audience for letting me share that. Thank you, Marcel. No, thank you, Sally. I mean, if everyone really should take the time to understand that Sally Edwards is a giant when it comes to heart rate training and the work that she's done, and she's being very modest. I mean, there's stuff that she's done in races to really push women to be fit. If people understand that not too far ago, it was a chauvinistic world that really didn't encourage women to be so successful as Sally has been. And she's done races where She's purposely finished last, so she encourages women to finish a race. And, go onto her website, Google her, really take a look at this, understand the individual that just shared this information with us. I can't say enough about her. I think the world of her. Thank you so much for delivering this. I look forward to following up in the future and inviting you back on. Hopefully we can put together our first zoning program here out of Ohio in the very near future. And I encourage everyone to contact her directly or go onto her website.
Thank you, Marcelo, and I'm sure you would share with them this PDF. It's certainly something I want everyone to have, and you can use it in your own workshops that you're doing. And it's like you're saying, how can we get people moving, give them motivational tools and programs that are based on good, rock-solid science that works and not myth and old stuff. And to work with people like yourself, Marcelo, I really respected the work that you've done in heart rate training over the last, Marcelo, how many years have you been doing that?
Oof, I've been doing it for about 15 plus. I'm a baby when it comes to all this, but I have had a really nice opportunity of meeting some of what I call the giants in the industry that I get to stand on your shoulders and really, I really have the head start really to not fall prey to dogma or fall prey to traditional methodology and just not ask any better questions or not understand that, have a better mindset. That's really the drive, again, of why we're doing these activities at Peak Performance is just really to show people and share with them openly some great solutions. So, again, Sally, thank you for your time. I look forward to sharing this with everyone.
Great. Thank you, Marcel. Thank you to your audience, and keep zoning.